Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at a very cool spice pick in the Open Master League, level 50 Shundo Suicune. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community and fellow content creator Drade Cam, so many thanks for the battle submission. Suicune is a pure water type Pokemon with the moveset of Snarl, Ice Beam, and Hydro Pump. Suicune definitely more of a pick for fun than for climbing. Drade pairs it up with a Shadow Mewtwo and a Xerneas, and has some pretty nice battles. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's check out Shundo Suicune in the Master League. Hopping into the first match, picking up a great lead, Suicune into Therian Landorus. Opponent is going to save switch into Dialga, and Dialga is going to be answered by Xerneas. Xerneas not building up to the Moonblast here, going straight for the close combat, and the opponent is going to commit the shield. Since Xerneas' defense is now debuffed, it is going to have to shield everything, and the opponent tries to go for the CMP tie, but Drade, because he doesn't throw, gets an entire Geomancy for free. Drade closing in on the back-to-back close combats here. Dialga is going to grab the second shield with the Iron Head, and now Xerneas is at 100 energy. Going for the first close combat, we see the no shield by the Dialga. Drade looking for the farm down and gets the farm down. Down a shield, but Xerneas has a ton of energy here and is going to be able to apply a ton of pressure to the Landorus. In comes the Landorus, and it's immediately met with the Moonblast. Moonblast will connect, continuing to farm with the Xerneas. Xerneas makes the close combat. This is resistant, but the Landorus has already taken a lot of damage. Landorus just straight up gets KO'd. In the back, it's a Giratina origin, and now it's Suicune's time to start spamming out these Ice Beams. Ice Beam will be shielded by the Giratina, continuing to farm with the Suicune. Suicune, even though it doesn't get to a very high CP, is a pretty bulky Pokemon, so it's able to withstand that Shadow Ball pretty decently, and now it's going to return fire with the Ice Beam. Ice Beam doesn't do a ton of damage. Again, Suicune is definitely focused on bulk, but the opponent overfarms too much, lets Suicune make it to another Ice Beam. Ice Beam plus the Snarl will get the KO and win the game. The good leads continue in the next match as Suicune is aligned against a Ho-Oh, and Ho-Oh is staying in this matchup. Suicune continuing to farm up energy. Suicune making it to the Hydro Pump here. This will hit for big super effective damage onto the Ho-Oh, and the Ho-Oh is going to let the charge move through. Ho-Oh is going to fire off the Brave Bird here. Suicune is going to be able to absorb this damage. We see a save switch by the opponent into Zacian, and Zacian will be answered with Mewtwo. Mewtwo farming up energy here and going to fire off the Psystrike. Psystrike is going to be no shielded by the Zacian. Zacian will return fire with a charge move. We see the shield from the Mewtwo here. Mewtwo could tank one, but instead choosing to keep the Mewtwo healthy and going for the Psystrike here. Psystrike into the Zacian will be shielded. It's a CMP tie. Decision time for the Mewtwo. We see the double shield from the Mewtwo. Mewtwo now going to get a Psycho Cut down and leave with quite a lot of energy. And in the back, it is Dialga. Going straight for the Psystrike here, not even building up to the Shadow Ball. Opponent is actually going to commit the shield, and this does set up a switch into the Ho-Oh by the opponent to catch the Psystrike. Very nice catch by the opponent, but now Dialga is going to have to deal with Xerneas. Xerneas farming up to the close combat and gets there. Close combat will not KO, but it does massive damage to the Dialga, and Dialga is rapidly running out of HP. Dialga is going to go for the Iron Head. Iron Head will be lethal here. Down goes Xerneas. There's still the low health Suicune, and Suicune is able to make the Ice Beam. Ice Beam takes down Dialga, and that's a good game. Moving into the next match, sending Suicune into Giratina Origin. Honestly, not a terrible matchup for Suicune to be in, and definitely nice to see the Giratina here and not aligned against the Mewtwo in the back. Suicune overfarming and firing off the Ice Beam. Ice Beam will be no shielded by the Giratina. Giratina going for one Shadow Claw and the move. Giratina full sends the Shadow Ball. We see the no shield from the Suicune. Suicune farming up to the Ice Beam and gets there, putting pressure on that first shield from the Giratina. Giratina is going to commit the shield. Giratina looking to overfarm, and at this point they can just go for the Ominous Wind. Bit of an awkward spot here, just gonna let that through as the Ominous Wind will get the KO. Luckily, the Ominous Wind does not boost. In comes Mewtwo. Mewtwo, unfortunately, is going to get outpaced here. Giratina fires off the Ominous Wind into the Mewtwo. Continuing to farm up, opponent is going to send in Dialga. overfarming a massive amount of energy with the Shadow Mewtwo and going for the Side Strike. 2 Side Strikes do not KO from a Shadow, but they come extremely close to KOing. Shadow Ball, I believe, would be lethal here, but instead opting to go for the double Side Strike and looking for an aggressive farm down with the Xerneas. Xerneas is going to go for the 1 shield farm down play and hope to leave with a bunch of energy that it can use to threaten the Giratina and whatever's in the back. Xerneas leaving with a lot of energy in the back. It's Melmetal, and this is a bit awkward. 1 close combat does not KO in this matchup, so forced to go for the Moonblast because you don't really want to lower your defense and then make the Rock Slides do way more damage. So Moonblast will be thrown, opponent is going to go for the Rock Slide, Xerneas continuing to farm. Melmetal firing off another Rock Slide. This is going to get the Xerneas extremely low, and Xerneas is now going to wait a turn to make sure the Melmetal doesn't catch and go for the close combat. Close combat will connect. We see a simultaneous switch, Giratina into the Mewtwo. Mewtwo is going to be hit with the Ominous Wind. Back in comes the Xerneas. Xerneas farming up, trying to make it to another charge move, but it just cannot get to enough charge moves here, and Giratina will take the win with the Ominous Wind. We see a mythical Pokemon on the lead in the next match, leading Suicune into Meloetta. Meloetta is extremely bulky. It is a great Pokemon if you do happen to have 296 rare XL candies to invest in, as this thing is an absolute beast. Suicune is going to absorb the Psyshock damage, go for the Hydro Pump, and Hydro Pump is going to connect. Suicune continuing to farm. Suicune will be able to absorb a Psyshock here, but the opponent ends up going for a surprise Thunderbolt, and that will get the KO. In comes Mewtwo. Mewtwo looking to overfarm and then go for the Psystrike. Psystrike is single resisted here due to that Psychic subtyping, but I believe it should be enough to KO. Opponent commits the shield, so they are not a massive fan of a Mewtwo with an energy advantage. Mewtwo shields up the Thunderbolt. We now see a save switch into a Snarl Zacian, and even though the Zacian is running Snarl, this is still a favorable matchup for the Mewtwo. Psystrike connects. That does massive damage. Zacian continuing to overfarm, and they overfarm a bit too much, allowing Mewtwo to make another Psystrike. Psystrike will get the shield. Mewtwo farming up. We see a switch into Xerneas. Zacian caps at 100 energy, and they're forced to throw. They go for the Wild Charge. Xerneas able to withstand that damage pretty well. Xerneas is going to commit the shield and look for the Geomancy farm down. Zacian goes for another Wild Charge. Geomancy does get the KO. Xerneas is going to be met with an opposing Xerneas in the back. And up this much energy, things are looking very good. Moonblast will connect, farming up to another Moonblast, and that's going to be goodbye to the opposing Xerneas. Opponent did save that Meloetta from earlier. Meloetta continuing to farm. We see a switch into the Mewtwo. Mewtwo is going to be able to force the Thunderbolt from the Meloetta, as Psyshock will not KO, and Xerneas has that close combat loaded. So despite a bit of a rough start there with the Thunderbolt getting the KO on the Suicune, the backline is still able to deliver a win. Picking up a bit of a tough lead in the next match, Suicune into Mewtwo. Mewtwo is extremely good in neutral matchups. Suicune is going to farm up, but will be outpaced here by the Mewtwo. Mewtwo goes for the Psystrike. That does quite a lot of damage. Suicune is able to make it to the Hydro Pump. Let's see, is the opponent willing to respect it? No, they are not, and Hydro Pump is able to connect. At this point, honestly, I think you might just let the Suicune go and then just trust in the backline here. In comes the Shadow Mewtwo. Shadow Mewtwo farming up and going for the Psystrike. Psystrike will easily KO the opponent here. Opponent is going to let that through. They now send in Dialga, and Dialga is going to be met with energy from the Shadow Mewtwo. Dialga will strike first, going for the Iron Head and being able to grab a shield from the Mewtwo. Mewtwo farming up to the back-to-back charge moves here, and he's won over a potential Focus Blast. Opponent is going to respect the Focus Blast there, and now Mewtwo is able to make it to a Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to actually grab the final shield, so opponent giving up both shields, and now in a shield advantage situation, it's up to Xerneas to close. Xerneas is going to shield up the Iron Head. Xerneas does have to watch for a potential catch, and the opponent does not get it. Close combat will deal massive damage in the back. It's Kyogre, and this is really not good, as Xerneas has lowered its defense by 2 stages. Xerneas going for the Moonblast before the Surf is reached. Moonblast is able to connect, and Kyogre firing off the Surf before the close combat can be reached. Close combat would have been enough, but unfortunately, with careful energy management, Kyogre takes the win. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Suicune into Giratina Origin. From what we've seen, this is a pretty solid matchup for the Suicune. Suicune over farming and going to fire off the Ice Beam. Ice Beam will hit for super effective damage into the Giratina, so Giratina is going to commit the shield. Suicune looking to shield back. The opponent is going to full send the Shadow Ball, so that proves to be a big shield. Suicune farming up. Giratina able to make it to a second Shadow Ball, and Shadow Ball is going to get the Suicune low. Suicune throwing one Snarl and the Ice Beam here, and should be able to make the next Ice Beam in 2 more Snarls. Ice Beam is going to connect. Suicune able to make another Ice Beam, and Suicune will be able to win the one shield here. Opponent is going to let that through. What are they going to be sending in? They send in a Melmetal. Melmetal looking for the Thundershock farm down. And unfortunately, Suicune is only able to make the Ice Beam here, not the Hydro Pump. And Ice Beam really does not do a lot of damage. In comes Xerneas. Xerneas will be able to withstand the barrage of Rock Slides from the Melmetal, as Melmetal is going to go for Rock Slide number 1. And now we see an immediate close combat from the Xerneas. Xerneas looking to put some pressure onto the opponent. We see a switch into the Mewtwo, and in the back, it is Dialga. So the opponent has double steal in the back. Mewtwo at the back-to-back Side Strikes here. One nice thing about being the Shadow Mewtwo is 2 Side Strikes do come very close to KOing. They don't quite KO, but with some Psycho Cuts, you can actually win the ones as the Shadow Mewtwo, just going straight Side Strike. More often than not, I would say that the normal one probably outperforms the Shadow, but this is a situation where being the Shadow is quite beneficial. The Side Strike will get the KO, back in comes the Melmetal. Melmetal will be hit with the final Side Strike. Looking to switch into the Xerneas to catch the Rock Slide that was aimed at the Mewtwo. Rock Slide will connect. Xerneas 3 Geomancies away. Opponent makes it to the Rock Slide here. The Xerneas has taken a lot of damage, but it's going to be able to take one more Rock Slide, hanging on with a fraction of HP, and close combat will KO the Melmetal, and that's a good game. Picking up a great lead in the next match, Suicune into Solgaleo. Suicune, of course, is hitting for super effective damage with the Snarl, and it is going to be resisting the Fire Spins from the Solgaleo. Solgaleo is going to be hit with the Hydro Pump, and that does quite a lot of damage. Solgaleo has farmed up a lot of energy here. We see the no shield from the Suicune, but disaster strikes. They're running Solar Beam on the Solgaleo, and Suicune gets one shot. That is absolutely terrible. In comes the Xerneas. Xerneas going for close combat, but losing CMP to the Solgaleo as it goes for the Psychic Fangs. Xerneas now firing off the close combat here. Do we see a shield from the Solgaleo? No. Solgaleo is going to get farmed down, but man, losing the Suicune like that is absolutely heartbreaking. In the back, it's double flyers. Opponent has Lugia and Rayquaza, and unfortunately, this is looking like a loss here, as the opponent is just going to be able to put a massive amount of pressure onto both the Mewtwo and the Xerneas with the flyers that remain. Continuing to farm with the Shadow Mewtwo. Shadow Mewtwo will go for the Side Strike here. This is now debuffed, and we see the double shield from Rayquaza, but Rayquaza tries to go for the farm down here. Is there a chance? Side Strike into Rayquaza does not get the KO. Rayquaza barely able to hang on, and they're just going to debuff. And now the combination of Xerneas' lowered attack and the massive bulk of Lugia means that Xerneas just cannot output enough damage to win this game. Xerneas is still going to try though, but this is just looking incredibly tough. Xerneas is going to let the Sky Attack go, but the Dragon Tail afterwards will win the game for the opponent. Hopping into the final match, leading Suicune into another Ho-Oh. Okay, you love to see it. Opponent is going to save switch into Zacian, and Zacian will be answered with the Shadow Mewtwo. Shadow Mewtwo over farming and going for the Side Strike. As we know, this will not KO, but it definitely hurts. That does massive damage to the Zacian. Last time, we saw Drade actually look to protect the Mewtwo, and it looks like he's going to do that this time as well. Shielding up the Wild Charge, going for the Side Strike, and the opponent decides to let that go. They can send back in the Ho-Oh here, but Ho-Oh is going to be outpaced by the Shadow Mewtwo, and Shadow Side Strike is no joke. This is going to deal a massive amount of damage. Opponent is going to let that through, and they're forced to fire off energy. Honestly, this is fine. You just let the Mewtwo go. You can send back in the Suicune. In the back, oh my goodness, it's Rayquaza. Do they know? Please tell me they do not. Going for the Ice Beam. They do know. Rayquaza commits the shield. Oh man, that is incredibly unfortunate. Dragon Ascent will not KO here. If they go for it, Oh, and they do not. I was going to say Xerneas can barely survive at that health range, but they go for the bait, and having that bait called is absolutely miserable if you're the Rayquaza. We see the no shield. Rayquaza goes for the Dragon Ascent. It will not KO. Xerneas is going to make the Moonblast. Moonblast will get the KO. Back in comes Ho-Oh. And now there's nothing stopping Ho-Oh from getting hit with a Hydro Pump. So the opponent concedes the match. All in all, these were some incredibly fun battles, and Suicune is not a Pokemon that I ever thought that I would see in the Master League, so big props to Drade, being able to run it, and being able to, honestly, I felt like it put in some pretty solid work in some of these games. I will say it would be nice if Suicune potentially got a move update in the future, if it got like a more consistent, cheaper water move than Hydro Pump. Hydro Pump, of course, if it lands, can be great, but it is very expensive to get to, so potentially getting a cheaper charge move, I don't know, maybe something like Scald in the future, could be quite nice. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.